Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 12th of July, and as always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information that you can easily get and freely have from 1-800-472-0391. That's the Alaska Weather Information Line. You can find us online at weather.gov, and if you change out the word at the end where we have Alaska, you can go to Alaska and start at the state level. You can go to Fairbanks and start at your interior, North Slope, or West Coast level. You can start for South Central and substitute the word in for Anchorage, which is where the office is, and you can look at the Aleutians, South Central, Kodiak Island, and Prince William Sound, or change this out to Juneau and look at all of Southeast there. Of course, if there's any other location in the United States that you'd like to find, just go to weather.gov, and in the search bar in the top left, type in the city, comma, and the state, and you'll be able to jump to that place. If you're going to Peoria, Illinois, that'd be a great way to check the forecast there. David.Snider@noaa.gov is the way you get a hold of me, and if you don't like something you see on the show, or you love something you see on the show and you want more of it, please let me know. Your comments and suggestions do help us shape what we show every day in Alaska weather, and we'd like to make sure that what we are doing here is serving and meeting your needs no matter what part of Alaska you're watching in tonight. Here is a look at some changes coming your way as we are trying to meet your needs. The Alaska Aviation Weather Unit's webpage is changing on Friday. It's going to be a big day, and it's going to be a big change for many of you. You have been used to the same old website for many, many, many years. Well, as technology has come along and different needs have prompted some changes on the server side, we've had to make some changes on our side. And of course we know, and we've heard from many of you, that not all those changes are exactly what you want to see, and it's not laid out exactly how you'd like to use the page. We are working to make those things better, faster, and in some cases reduce the number of clicks it takes to get to your favorite products. So please let us know if that is working for you, and as those changes are rolled out, you'll see them reflected in the new site. Weather.gov/AAWU is the new site to look at. The old site's going to stay up, but on Friday those changes are going to be made and that old site will go away. Your emails are appreciated. Here's the really long email here. You can use that. That is also online, so you don't have to memorize it or write it down now. But make sure you've checked that out if you haven't recently, because the way you look at links, maps for PIREPs and TAFs and other forecasts are going to change on Friday. So there you go. You've been warned. The FAA aviation weather cameras today, always a use, something we've had a lot of requests for, to put that up in more of a prominent spot on the new AWU weather page. You can get to the Honolulu webcam, and if you would have looked at that today, you probably would have noticed a lot of poor visibility. Here's Honolulu, if you're not really familiar with the northern Susitna Valley, Anchorage, up toward Talkeetna on the Parks Highway, and then onward toward McKinley Park. If you're looking at it from Fairbanks, Dehne, then McKinley Park, then Honolulu. This is what it looked like, and that was not cloud cover, but smoke. So guessing at this point that a lot of the fires up around the upper Yukon Valley, Fort Yukon and the surrounding fires there, are blowing in smoke from a northerly wind that is driving this into kind of the northern park area, and as a result reducing visibility. Chances are, if you're in South Central or anywhere perhaps in the western Susitna Valley the last couple of nights, you probably saw a really beautiful sunset last night, but a hazy one, an orange one, and those smoke particles scatter the light and make that more of a reddish, orange, even brown color sometimes. So maybe a good sunset picture, but certainly a smell of the spruce in the air there from the smoke that we're getting. That, as far as I can tell, is not a fire around Honolulu at all, but way upstream in the upper Yukon Valley and the Yukon Flats. So that could be true. I'm not 100% sure on there, but certainly something to keep in mind, and kind of tracing that back into the satellite picture. And we still have some very high, if not extreme, fire danger across the Yukon Flats and the upper Yukon Valley this afternoon and this evening. So there are several fires ongoing there, and certainly being monitored. Up across the coastal plain and the North Slope, high fire danger there in the tundra region, and across the middle Yukon and out to the Kobuk and upper Koyukuk valleys, we continue to see some high fire danger in that region there, but not so much for south central, the Copper River Basin, certainly not southeast and southwestern Alaska. Conditions there have improved in the last couple days. Here's a look at the visible satellite picture now. We still have our low in the Gulf, and you can see it's just spinning clouds into southeast. Underneath them, a scattering of showers located across northern and southern locations primarily today. Kodiak picked up a mere 5/100ths of an inch of rainfall. We call that a dry day for Kodiak. Northern parts of the Gulf generally dry there, and certainly a rapid decrease in clouds across south central and southwest. Unalaska and Dutch Harbor picked up a little bit of rain today. St. Paul and St. George under the clouds and fighting the fog out across the Bering. As high pressure has been chipping away the clouds, it's also locking in some lower clouds across the north and western sections of the Bering, St. Matthew Island into Norton Sound, and you can see low clouds here across Kotzebue Sound and the Chukchi Seacoast earlier today. Let's flip it over to the infrared satellite picture and notice the wealth of clouds across the North Slope. High pressure is in charge there, and it's pushing down on the atmosphere, but that's also creating a very stable layer of air that is making it hard to bubble away the clouds, as we've seen across many sections of south central and southwestern Alaska today. As we watch this one more time, you'll also notice a spiraling of the atmosphere here out across Shemya and the western Aleutians. That is the next wave of low pressure that is pushing a frontal boundary across the north and western Bering and bringing in another surge of warm and wet air across the central and eastern chain. As this moves northward once again, conditions will continue to warm up across the west coast and will continue to chip away at the ice across the north slope. High pressure is locked in up north at 1,030 millibars. It is pushing colder air southward, and this boundary is helping to generate showers and thunderstorms off the Brooks Range, and those are moving southward tonight, so a slightly different flow than what most of you are used to. There has been smoke reported across the western Susitna again and around the Honolulu region even further north. The chances are this is coming from a source region up around the upper Yukon and Yukon Flats region, as best I can tell. 999 millibars low just south of Attu, areas of fog with that, areas of rain around St. Paul and St. George, and also across southeast tonight. Most other parts of Alaska, as of about 3 or 4 o'clock, were pretty dry, so not a whole lot to report on for precipitation, and because of that, temperatures were going up. Widely scattered showers and thunderstorms will continue tracking southward tonight into the interior. Watch for showers behind that up against the Brooks Range. High pressure continues up north around the Beaufort Seacoast, 1,028 millibars there with areas of fog. And we expect similar areas of fog around the Dixon entrance and parts of southeast tonight. So if it does clear up for you, you'll probably wake up to fog in the morning. Low pressure across the eastern Gulf at 1,011 millibars there, and high pressure settles into areas just outside of Bristol Bay at 1,025 millibars. All of this will stabilize the air all the way up through the Kotzebue Sound and Bering Strait regions. And out west, a little more unsettled weather. Low pressure there at 1,007 millibars across the western chain, keeping some areas of light rain and maybe just drizzle possible for many along the Pribilofs and areas to the south and west for the overnight hours. Tomorrow, widely scattered showers and thunderstorms will be a little bit more noticeable, I think, across the interior, across the upper Kuskokwim into the Koyukuk Valley, and across south central, even perhaps around the hills around Anchorage. Now, further south right now, the Kenai Peninsula, not looking like the best chance for seeing those showers and storms, but many folks are hitting the roads all the way from the interior and heading south to the Kenai. Perhaps you're heading out to the Chitna. Either way, you're going to see a change in the weather, and pay attention to what the forecast is telling you there with the chance of showers and thunderstorms. And at the first sign of thunder and lightning in the region, it's time to head inside, head into the car, get off the beach and get away from your big long metal poles that you're using to scoop up fish, because that is a lightning rod. And of course, the first time you hear that thunder or see the lightning, you are in striking distance. On average, lightning likes to go about 10, maybe even 12 miles away from a thunderstorm. On average, that means there's certainly some longer strikes out there, and if you're in the path, well, that's bad news, of course. Showers across parts of southeast, areas of clouds and fog to start in the morning, but look for showers across northern parts from the capital city to Skagway and Haines and Gustavus by the afternoon. High pressure sitting across Norton Sound at 1,021 millibars. We have a trough of low pressure here that just doesn't seem to want to move very much, and out across the west, another wave right behind that there that'll slowly reinforce those southerly winds. Here's Friday. Even more thunderstorms possible on Friday, in fact. We'll say instead of widely scattered, scattered. So even more coverage there across the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range to the upper Koyukuk, maybe into the Noatak Valley there, and across the Seward Peninsula, The YK Delta could see a scattering of storms, and also across the Alaska range and parts of south central. This time Friday, it looks like Kenai Peninsula will have a better chance for those storms. Showers across southeast, high pressures building in across the eastern Gulf there, but we still have this disturbance lurking here that may allow Kodiak to pick up some more rainfall. High pressure sitting just south of the chain should lock in a better chance of fog across the southern Bering, generally south of the Pribilof Islands, and out to the west, a better chance of showers there as that wave of low pressure continues to slowly fall apart. Here's a look at temps today. It was mild across southeast, mid to upper 50s, even upper 60s as you move up into the northern Lynn Canal there. Haines and Skagway were in the 70s this afternoon, mid 50s further south under heavier clouds and showers, 63 in Sitka, 68 around Cordova, cool though around Portage and Whittier with 63 in Homer, 64 in Homer, 63 in Seward, but a cool 58 in Kenai at the 3 o'clock hour thanks to an onshore flow off the inlet. 71 in Anchorage. It was nearly 80 in Talkeetna. It did make it up to 82 this afternoon. There's 70 around Fairbanks mid-afternoon, 75 in Eagle, 70 in Fort Yukon, 57 for Arctic Village, and 66 around Anaktuvuk Pass with 40s and 50s for the North Slope. 59, one of the warmer readings around Wainwright. Mid-40s for Kivalina, 50 in Kotzebue, 55 in Shishmaref, about the same there in Nome. Unalakleet had nearly 60 degrees. Galena and down the road, back in the mid to upper 70s there, 72 in Grayling and Russian Mission, 70 as well as you get into the Kuskokwim Valley, 78 for McGrath, 61 in Bethel. Bristol Bay temperatures back in the lower 70s. Lake Iliamna, 72. 40s, 50s, and 60s for the Alaska Peninsula. Sandpoint, one of the warmer spots there at 66. 72 around Dutch Harbor and Unalaska. Freakishly warm. And 40s and 50s in the Pribilofs, trying to keep it real. So there you go. A lot of Alaska temperatures for you there. Mild overnight in the valleys, all the way up to Kuskokwim into the middle Yukon and the upper Yukon Valley. 50s and 60s there. 40s and 50s for southeast. Lower 50s for most of south central. 55 in Kodiak. 61 in Fairbanks. 30s for the North Slope on the Beaufort Seacoast to Point Barrow and Kaktovik. Upper 30s there. 45 for Wainwright, warmer down the coast. 40s and 50s for the Kotzebue Sound region. 51 in Nome. 53 in Unalakleet. Looks like McGrath will hold around 62, and 40s and 50s for parts of southwest and Bristol Bay. High temperatures tomorrow in the lower to mid 80s for the interior. Clearly one of the warmer spots again, Fairbanks, Tanana, McGrath, probably places in the mid to upper Susitna Valley like Talkeetna once again. And most of south central will be considerably warmer than we had today. 75 in Kodiak, mid to upper 60s for southeast, also catching some of the heat. Looks like upper 70s for Eagle. The North Slope back in the 50s and 60s tomorrow. Kotzebue Sound, 50s and 60s for you. 63 in Nome and southwest coastal areas even pushing closer to the mid to upper 70s, maybe even 80 degrees around Cape Newenham, and again Bethel 77, Dutch Harbor back in the 50s. A few thunderstorms may linger during the early morning hours tomorrow across the central and western interior. Otherwise, it's MVFR to start for southeast. Most of south central and southwest should be okay. MVFR for Norton Sound and Kotzebue Sound regions and the eastern Beaufort Seacoast, with IFR to start around Dutch Harbor and the Pribilofs, as well as Adak and Atka. By the afternoon, IFR looks fairly solid from St. Lawrence Island to Nunivak Island to just about Sand Point, so plan on conditions not changing very much for you in the afternoon. MVFR should start breaking up for parts of southeast. They're generally south of Juneau out towards Sitka and on and off throughout the southern inner channels. A widely scattering of storms across the interior will probably change a few of your flight plans. And Kotzebue Sound looking at MVFR, with the Beaufort Seacoast looking at improving conditions for the afternoon. Here's your pass conditions. Things look A-OK for Anaktuvuk and Adigan Pass, both expecting thunderstorms in the afternoon. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass look pretty good. VFR conditions there. Watch for convection there and in Rainy Pass throughout the afternoon. Windy Pass looking to be VFR through most of the day. Isabel Pass looks to be pretty good. Visual flight rule also expected for Mentasta, a few showers and storms there, and for Tanita Pass by the afternoon. Portage Pass, we expect to see VFR throughout the day. Chilkoot and White Pass holding at MVFR through most of your Thursday. Freezing levels indicate that we do have a cool pool of air just lurking across the south and eastern parts of the Gulf, but quickly those levels rise to about 8,000 to 10,000, even 12,000 feet across the west, and the bulk of the heat centered up right there around St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Sea, the Strait region there above 14,000 feet. So a lot of heat sitting right out there across the west. So we have to climb pretty high to find any sizable risk of icing, but there are some lower levels there, and a little puff of moisture here centered up on central and southern parts of the Panhandle above 8,000 feet could bring you some light icing potential throughout the afternoon tomorrow, and out west, those levels above 10,000 feet. Thunderstorms, of course, imply a risk of isolated severe icing, so watch for that. Low pressure out across the Gulf, showing that broad west and northwesterly flow coming into the southern Bering Sea, but not so fast, 50 to 70 knots there. High pressure's trying to cut that off and build into the interior of Alaska. You can see the ridge up across the Chukchi coast. And here's our pesky area of low pressure across the Gulf. Wind speeds not so fast around that. They pick up, though, heading into the Pacific Northwest. At 9,000 feet, you can see the ridge is firmly in control. Northerlies for most of the interior. They're fairly light, 10 to 15, 25 over Prince William Sound, and a north and easterly offshore flow for northern southeast and a light onshore flow from southern southeast with a 25-knot wind. At 3,000 feet, you can see that southerly wind across the Bering Sea, pumping up heat into the Arctic, 10 to 20 knots there. Winds are fairly light again across the interior. And for southeast, we have a gentle east and southeasterly flow across the Panhandle, 10 to 20 knots at tops. The turbulence potential is fairly limited tomorrow. You'll have to go out to the Aleutians to find any sizable risk of turbulence. That should be fairly light. And once again, widely scattered thunderstorms imply isolated severe turbulence, so be on your guard. That's a look at your aviation forecast. I'm back with your sea ice update and marines in just a few minutes. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Mr. Bale. One of the nicest things about this business is the fact that you meet so many great people and become really good friends over the years. And it just happens that Mr. Bale is one of those people who I consider one of my great friends. Mo is from Transport Canada. He never turns us down unless he's got a conflict in a schedule. And we've had him up here, excuse me, several times. We always just enjoy him thoroughly. And with that, I'll say welcome back again, Mo.
Well, thank you very much, Jenny. Very kind introduction. It does kind of set a pace that may be difficult to keep up with here, but we'll do the best that we can. It's gratifying to see so many faces in the group today. Nice for pilots to all get together and share ideas, I guess. I better get some electronic wizardry started here and remind me not to look into that light again. Wow. My name is Mo Bale. I'm what they call a regional aviation safety officer. When you work for the federal government in Canada, you get called a lot of different things, okay? Believe me. But I'm going to accept Mo, so you can just call me that if you like, and I would appreciate that. Now, the regional aviation safety officer, the region that I'm specifically tasked with developing and presenting programs such as this, is not unique, but there's a reason why I'm here, and one of those reasons is that my region borders on Alaska. It also borders on Montana, and I do similar programs for them in the lower 48. The region is bordered by the Alcan Highway, okay, so that it falls entirely within my region. That's one of the ways that it's set up geographically. So I cover all of the province of Alberta, the western half of the Northwest Territories in the Arctic, all of the Yukon Territory, and a little northeastern corner of British Columbia. They like to think of themselves as being Albertans anyway. And we do too. They're pretty good. Now the branch that I work for in Transport Canada is called the System Safety Branch. We used to be called the Aviation Safety Programs, but because of some changes to the, not specific duties, but some additional requirements of our branch within, they found that the name System Safety was probably defined our duties just a little bit more accurately. The closest liaison that I have is exactly with Joel Wilcox with safety programs with the FAA. That's a very close comparison. The mission that I have is similar as well, and it's a mission that's probably shared by most pilots, actually, whether you think of it that way or not. And it's to actively search for safety hazards and develop programs of accident prevention. I have a lot of people helping me to do that, people inside the department and people outside the department as well, the sharing of information, if you would. The presentation tonight deals with safety. It deals with judgment, primarily pilot judgment. So that's where the focus is going to be. But to begin with, I'd like to put up a definition of safety, where the responsibilities lie, if you would, that it is in fact the responsibility of the flight crew, and more specifically, and in most cases, the pilot in command. The definition here infers that there's a skill requirement, that as a skilled pilot gains experience through the years, their ability to exercise good judgment will increase. And that's true. I concentrate on judgment and the decision-making type of thing, judgment being the key element in the decision-making process, but not to the exclusion of attaining and maintaining a very high degree of skill in your chosen field, your endeavor. The stick and rudder skills, all the other skills that go along with flying an airplane must be there first, and then you use those as a basis to make good judgments. Occasionally, and when I say occasionally, it's rare, but it happens, that pilots will use the word judgment as an excuse for not maintaining a high level of skill. You really cannot trade one for the other, if you can get my understanding. You have to attain and maintain that high level of skill first. So please do that and ensure that it's there as well. And then, with experience, judgment becomes better. It's important for us as pilots to recognize that there's a very delicate balance that exists in our recreation or our field of career or whatever else it may be. Are there some professional pilots in the crowd, or pretty well all general aviation? Is there a mix? Who flies for a living? Couple? Anybody fly helicopters? Anybody a rotary wing pilot? Joel? Oh, sit up front so I don't have to talk loud. Okay? Yeah. Now, I hate to make jokes about helicopter pilots. They have enough trouble, don't they? All those moving parts. Holy cow.
The sea ice update includes warmer weather building into the Arctic with high pressure across the west coast. A lot of that air is moving up quickly from the south and west along the Chukchi coast, but we'll still have an easterly component working along the Beaufort Sea coast. One piece of good news is across the coast here, you'll start to see lower and lower concentrations of ice right around the navigational waters there. So watch for changes, but watch for a lot of changes that may fluctuate up and down as we go through the next couple days. But conditions are improving for navigation anyway, probably in the next several weeks. So that's your latest sea ice edge update. Weather.gov/Anchorage/ice for more. In southeast, look for a gentle south and easterly flow working through the inner channels until you get up to the Lynn Canal. A stronger southerly wind at 20 knots with a 4-foot sea. Outer coast seas around 4 to 5 feet. Inner channels looking at 2 to 4 feet for your Thursday. And as we get into Friday, about 10 to 20 knots on the inside. The strongest winds, of course, across the Lynn Canal with a 4-foot sea, 2-foot seas elsewhere. Southeast, looking at a gentle southeasterly flow up the outer coast. 10 knots with a 3-foot sea in most areas, 15 knots outside of the Dixon entrance for Friday. Across south central, light northwesterlies inside of Prince William Sound, 2-foot seas there, 4-foot seas on the outside. A light and variable wind inside of Cook Inlet today, 1 to 2-foot seas expected for Thursday, and a west and southwesterly flow from the Barren Islands out toward Shelikof Strait region, 4 to 5-foot seas over the Barrens. That diminishes to 3 feet inside of Shelikof Strait, and a westerly wind a little stronger east of Kodiak Island. That diminishes on Friday down to 15 knots with a 4-foot sea. Southeasterlies building in across the northern Gulf, 15 knots there, and light easterlies develop inside of Prince William Sound. We'll keep our 10-knot winds over Cook Inlet. Seas come up, though, to about 2 to 3 feet there for Friday afternoon. In Bristol Bay, 20 knots with a westerly flow, 5-foot seas expected there. Also looking for the westerlies at 20 across Castle Cape to Chignik, southwesterlies south of Sand Point and King Cove, 15 knots with a 4-foot sea, and light and variable flow north of Cold Bay all the way out toward Port Hayden. There are 2-foot seas expected down the Bering Sea coast. A gentle westerly wind at 15 knots inside of Bristol Bay on Friday, 15 to 20 across the Pacific coast. Also looking at 5-foot seas there to wrap up the week. For the Aleutians, a broad southerly flow for the central and eastern chain, 15 to 20 knots, 4 to 5-foot seas on the Bering Sea coast, and 6 to 7-foot seas across the Pacific. Looking for a westerly wind from Kiska to Attu, 20 knots with a 7-foot sea there on Thursday, becoming southeasterly on Friday. Southwesterlies continue for the central and eastern chain, and southerlies for the Adak, Atka, and Kiska region, 20 knots with 4 to 7-foot seas, 4 to 5-foot seas out in the east. Across the west coast, southerlies continue for St. Paul and St. George. Southeasterlies off of Macoriac and the St. Matthew Island waters, 5 to 6-foot seas there. More of a southerly push coming over St. Lawrence Island. And onshore flow for the Kuskokwim Delta region, 15 knots with a 4-foot sea on Thursday, becoming light from the south and west on Friday with 3-foot seas. Looking for light southeasterlies over St. Lawrence Island. A variable flow around St. Matthew under the effects of high pressure, and southwesterlies over St. Paul and St. George. Small seas and 15-knot winds expected to wrap up the week. Back to the north slope we go, and easterlies for the Beaufort Seacoast as we were talking about. 3 to 4-foot seas there with ice still cutting off our sea forecast for Prudhoe Bay and Deadhorse. 15 knots for the Beaufort, and south and southwesterlies for the Chukchi Coast and outside of Kotzebue Sound at 10 to 15. 2 to 3-foot seas for Thursday, and small seas continue for Friday with a southerly flow, and a west and southwesterly flow starts to move in for your Friday afternoon. Again, any ice in the navigational waters will be moving in, so what you see one day may not be there again the next day. So just keep that in mind as you're making your plans. Tonight's forecast indicates a chance for widely scattered showers and thunderstorms across the interior. Those are moving southward off the Brooks Range this afternoon. A few showers may pop up across the western Alaska Range, and many of you may see smoke with a northerly wind blowing smoke away from wildfires up across the upper Yukon Valley. Light rain will continue across parts of southeast and across the chain in the Alaska Peninsula. That will creep eastward tomorrow. A better chance of thunderstorms for the interior and parts of south central as we get into your Thursday. We'll watch for a continued threat for rain showers across parts of southeast, especially north of Juneau to Haines, Skagway, and Gustavus. As we get into Friday, more wet weather for southeast, more thunderstorms for the interior and south central as we go into the weekend, so keep your eye on that. Thanks for watching. We'll see you right here again tomorrow.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.